I was 36 years old when I found out I was disposable, not in some poetic, existential way. My stepmom, Diana, actually said those words to my face. We were standing in my father's study a week after his funeral, surrounded by leather-bound books he'd never read, and awards from a career that had consumed him. The rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers as Diana swirled her whiskey, her diamond bracelet catching the dim light. "You have to understand, Jennifer," she said, her voice gentle as if she was doing me a favor. "Your father only married your mother because she got pregnant with you. When she died, he was going to let you go to your grandparents, but they were too old. You were just his backup plan, a duty he fulfilled." I remember how the world seemed to tilt beneath my feet, how cold spread through my chest like ice water. For 36 years, I'd built my entire life around being the dutiful daughter. I'd chosen a local college to stay close to home. I'd taken a job at his company because it made sense for the family. I'd postponed my own dreams, my own life, because family always came first. But I wasn't family. I was an obligation. I didn't cry. Not then. I just nodded, set down my own untouched whiskey, and walked out, Diana's voice calling after me with artificial concern. "Jennifer, don't be dramatic. I'm just being honest with you." Honesty, after a lifetime of lies. 2 days later, I sat across from my father's lawyer, Mr. Harrington, in his downtown office. He was an older man with kind eyes who'd known my father for 30 years. His desk was buried under neat stacks of papers, and a single photograph of his grandchildren faced him rather than his visitors. The office smelled like leather and furniture polish. "I wanted to discuss the will with you privately," he said, pulling out a thick folder. "There are some details I believe you should be aware of." I braced myself. After Diana's truth bomb, I was ready for the final blow, to learn I'd been cut out entirely. "Your father made some unusual amendments to his will 5 years ago," Mr. Harrington continued, clearing his throat. He never discussed these changes with me in detail, but the timing coincided with some health concerns he was having. He slid a document across the desk. "This is the current version of the will. The estate, including the family home, his shares in the company, and the majority of his liquid assets, has been left to you." I stared at him. "What?" "Ms. Diana has received a life interest in the guest house and a monthly stipend, but the bulk of the estate passes to you." My hands shook as I took the papers. "But Diana told me, she made it very clear that I wasn't—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Mr. Harrington's expression hardened slightly. "Ms. Diana was shown a preliminary version of the will last week. She is aware of these terms." I felt like I'd walked into the wrong movie. Why would she tell me I meant nothing to him if she knew he left me everything? He removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Jennifer, I've known your father since before you were born. He wasn't always emotionally forthcoming, but he was meticulous about protecting what mattered to him." He hesitated, then reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "He left this for you as well. I was instructed to give it to you privately." I took it, my name written in my father's sharp, slanted handwriting. The envelope felt heavy, like it contained more than just paper. "One more thing," Mr. Harrington said as I stood to leave. "Your father added a codicil 3 years ago. If anyone contests this will, they forfeit any inheritance and all rights to remain on the property." He was quite emphatic about that clause. I didn't open the letter right away. I drove to the beach where my father used to take me as a child. Before Diana, before everything became about status and appearances. I sat on the cold sand, watching waves crash against the shore in the fading light. When I finally tore open the envelope, a small key fell into my lap along with several folded pages. I recognized it immediately. It opened the antique secretary desk in his bedroom, the one piece of furniture that had belonged to my mother. The letter began without preamble, in typical dad fashion. "Jennifer, if you're reading this, I've failed you in the most fundamental way. I've left you alone to face the vultures. I'm not good with words or feelings, as you well know, but there are things you need to understand. First, Despite what you may have been told, you were never a mistake or an obligation. You were wanted. Your mother and I had been trying for a child for 2 years before you came along. She kept the negative tests in a box, 36 of them. One for each week we waited for you, she used to say. When she died, a part of me died too. I didn't know how to be both mother and father to you. I didn't know how to talk about feelings, or braid hair, or explain periods. I was terrified of failing you, and in my fear, I became distant. That was my greatest mistake. Marrying Diana was my second mistake. I thought you needed a mother figure, and I was lonely. By the time I realized she viewed you as competition rather than as a daughter, we were too entangled financially and socially for a clean break. I'm a coward, Jennifer. I chose the path of least resistance. The key enclosed opens your mother's desk. The false bottom in the middle drawer contains documents you'll need. The original deed to the house, in your name since your 30th birthday, stock certificates, and a record of deposits I've made to an account in your name for the past 15 years. Diana doesn't know about any of this. She also doesn't know that I've known about her affair with Robert for the past 4 years. The flash drive in the desk has everything. Photos, records of money she's funneled to him, hotel receipts. I kept it as insurance. Now it's yours to use as you see fit. I failed to protect you in life. Let me at least try to protect you after I'm gone. There's one last thing. The courage you've shown, living authentically despite Diana's constant criticism, despite my emotional absence. It has been the thing I've admired most in this world. You are the best of your mother and the best parts of me that I was too weak to live up to. Forgive me if you can. Dad, I sat there until the tide came in, soaking the hem of my pants. The letter crumpled in my fist as tears finally came. Not for the father I'd lost, but for the father I never knew I had. When I returned to the house, my house, Diana was in the living room with a man I recognized as Robert, her supposed financial advisor. They didn't hear me come in, too engrossed in their conversation. The old fool actually left everything to her, Diana was saying, her voice tight with anger. But don't worry, I've taken care of it. I told her yesterday that she was just his obligation, that he never wanted her. You should have seen her face. She'll be too broken to fight me when I contest the will. Robert, a tan man with 2 white teeth and carefully styled silver hair, chuckled. Did you tell her about our plans for the company? God, no. She still thinks it's some family legacy. Once we sell it to Marcus, we can finally get out of this miserable... I cleared my throat. They jumped apart like guilty teenagers, Diana's wine sloshing over the rim of her glass onto the white couch. My white couch. Jennifer... Her face arranged itself into a mask of maternal concern. We didn't hear you come in. This is Robert. He's helping me sort through some of your father's financial matters. I looked between them, seeing them clearly for the first time. Diana with her calculated smiles and practiced vulnerability. Robert with his predatory eyes, already assessing how to handle me. I just came from Mr. Harrington's office, I said calmly. Interesting discussion. Diana's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. I'm sure it was very technical. Why don't you let Robert and me handle all that boring legal stuff? You've been through so much already. In that moment, I made a decision. I would not confront them. I would not scream or throw things or demand explanations. There would be no dramatic showdown where I revealed I knew everything. That's what they wanted. Emotion they could use against me, evidence that I was unstable or not thinking clearly in my grief. Instead, I smiled softly. You're right, Diana. It's all been so overwhelming. I think I'll go lie down. The relief on her face was almost comical. As I turned to leave, I added, Oh, and Robert, I believe your hourly rate as a financial advisor is quite high. I wouldn't want to waste your valuable time. Perhaps it's best if you don't return until the official reading of the will on Friday. I walked upstairs to the sound of urgent whispers. Behind me, my heart pounding, but my mind surprisingly clear. For the first time in my adult life, I knew exactly what I needed to do. That night, I retrieved everything from my mother's desk. the stock certificates, the banking information, and the flash drive. I stayed up until dawn, going through every photo, every email, every receipt. Then I made calls to the family company's board members, to the bank, to a security firm, and finally to a real estate agent I trusted. For the next 3 days, I played the part of the grieving, confused daughter. I avoided Diana as much as possible, and when I couldn't, I was quiet and subdued. I let her believe her poison was working, that I was crumbling under the weight of her revelations about my father's supposed indifference. Meanwhile, I was building my case methodically. I met with each board member individually, showing them evidence of Diana's plan to sell the company to our main competitor. I spoke with trusted employees who had witnessed Diana and Robert copying confidential files. I changed the locks on my mother's desk and my father's study. I had security cameras installed while Diana was at her spa appointment. Friday arrived, the day of the official will reading. Diana entered Mr. Harrington's office with Robert at her side, both dressed in somber black as if they were attending a second funeral. I wore navy blue, my mother's sapphire earrings catching the light. Diana noticed them immediately, her eyes narrowing. "Those are lovely, Jennifer. Are they new?" Her voice suggested they couldn't possibly be genuine. "They were my mother's," I replied simply. "Dad kept them in her desk all these years." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. She hadn't known about the desk's contents. Mr. Harrington began reading the will, his voice formal and measured. Diana's expression remained confident until he reached the part about the codicil. Anyone contesting the will would forfeit everything. Her knuckles whitened as she gripped her purse. When the reading concluded, she stood quickly. "This can't be right. Harold always intended for me to have the house, at minimum. He told me so many times. Jennifer doesn't even appreciate that. House. She has her own condo downtown." Mr. Harrington looked at her steadily. "The will is quite clear, Ms. Diana, and as I've just read, any contest will result in the forfeiture of your life interest in the guest house and your monthly stipend." She turned to me, her eyes suddenly wet with perfectly timed tears. "Jennifer, you know this isn't what your father would have wanted. We were married for 15 years. That house is my home." I met her gaze calmly. "Actually, Diana, I've been thinking about what Dad would have wanted. He would have wanted the truth." I placed a folder on the table. "These are copies of documents showing how you've been transferring company funds to personal accounts for the past 3 years. There are also some interesting photographs of you and Robert from various hotel rooms, including ones from when Dad was in the hospital last year." The color drained from her face. Robert stood abruptly. "This is preposterous. You can't just—" "I've already shared this information with the company board," I continued as if he hadn't spoken. "They've voted to remove you as a director, Diana, and the police are quite interested in the financial aspects." Diana's mask cracked completely. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I've done for you, what exactly have you done for me, Diana? Called me a backup child? Tried to erase my mother's memory? Planned to sell my father's company before his body was cold?" I stood, gathering my things calmly. "You have until Monday to remove your belongings from the guest house. Security will supervise to ensure nothing from the main house disappears. Your stipend will be paid until the end of the month. As a courtesy my father would have extended despite everything." I walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Diana, the necklace you're wearing belongs to my mother as well. You can leave it with Mr. Harrington on your way out." Her hand flew to her throat, clutching the diamond pendant she'd claimed was a gift from my father. The lie exposed, she looked suddenly older, smaller. As I left the office, I heard her desperate voice behind me. "You can't do this. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family." But I kept walking. There was nothing more to say. The aftermath was both simpler and more complicated than I'd expected. Diana tried to fight, of course. She called family friends, spreading stories about my mental breakdown after my father's death. She even showed up at my office, creating a scene that ended with security escorting her out. But I'd prepared for this. I'd already spoken to those same friends, sharing carefully selected pieces of evidence. I'd changed all the locks, passwords, and security codes. I'd informed the bank of potential fraud attempts. Each time Diana tried to undermine me, she only validated my actions. When she finally realized she couldn't win, she took what was left of her dignity and moved to Florida with Robert. Last I heard, they'd broken up 6 months later when the money started running low. I didn't sell the company as Diana had planned. Instead, I took my father's seat on the board and started learning the business from the ground up. I converted the guest house into a home office. I redecorated the main house, replacing Diana's cold minimalism with warmth and color, including photos of my mother that had been banished to storage decades ago. On quiet nights, I sometimes sit in my father's study, my study now, and read his letter again. I try to understand the complicated man who loved me, but couldn't show it, who protected me from a distance, but never gave me what I truly needed. His presence. The pain doesn't disappear. The wasted years of seeking approval, of dimming myself to avoid outshining Diana, of postponing my own dreams to be the daughter I thought my father wanted, those losses are real. But there's a strange peace in finally knowing the truth, in no longer chasing phantoms or measuring myself against impossible standards. 6 months after the will reading, I received a call from Mr. Harrington. "Jennifer, I've been sorting through some of your father's old files, and I found something you might want to see." When I arrived at his office, he handed me a small, worn leather book. It was tucked behind some tax records from the 90s. "I believe it's your father's journal from the year after your mother died." That night, I curled up in my mother's reading chair and opened the journal with trembling hands. My father's handwriting, usually so controlled and precise, was jagged and uneven in these pages, the ink blotched in places where tears had fallen. March 15th, 1987. Sarah's been gone 2 months now. Jennifer asked for her at bedtime again tonight. How do I keep explaining that Mommy isn't coming back? She's only 4. She shouldn't have to understand death yet. April 3rd, 1987. Jennifer found Sarah's perfume today and sprayed it all over herself and her stuffed animals. The whole house smells like Sarah now. I should be angry about the waste, but instead I just sat in the hallway and cried where Jennifer couldn't see me. God, I miss her so much. May 20th, 1987. Jennifer's preschool had a Mother's Day event today. She made a card for Sarah anyway, with a picture of her in heaven. The teacher called me concerned. I told her it was fine. Later, we took the card to the cemetery together. Jennifer told Sarah all about her week while I stood there, useless, unable to fix any of this for her. June 12th, 1987. Everyone says I should start dating again. Jennifer needs a mother, they tell me, as if any woman could replace Sarah. Jennifer doesn't need just any mother. She needs her mother. And I need my wife. The thought of another woman in our home, in our life, feels like betrayal. July 4th, 1987. Took Jennifer to see the fireworks tonight. Sarah loved fireworks. When the big finale lit up the sky, Jennifer clapped and turned to me with Sarah's exact smile and said, "Daddy, I bet Mommy can see these from heaven." I had to agree, because what else could I say? But it broke something in me. I don't know how to do this alone. I don't know how to be enough for her. I read late into the night, watching my father struggle with grief, with single parenthood, with his own emotional limitations. I saw his guilt when he first considered dating again, his reservations about Diana from the beginning, and most of all, his constant aching love for me. Confused, imperfect, but real. In the final entry, dated just before their wedding, he wrote, "Diana isn't Sarah. She never will be. But Jennifer needs stability, structure, a woman's influence. I can give her that much at least. Maybe someday she'll understand that everything, even this marriage, is for her. She is all that matters to me now." I closed the journal, understanding finally that my father had made a devil's bargain. His own happiness sacrificed for what he thought was my well-being. He had been wrong, tragically wrong, but he had acted out of love, not obligation. The next morning, I called a childhood friend I hadn't spoken to in years. We met for coffee, awkward at first, then falling into easy conversation as if no time had passed. When she asked what I'd been doing, I surprised myself by saying, "Starting over, figuring out what I actually want instead of what I think I should want." "And what do you want, Jennifer?" she asked. I smiled, the answer suddenly clear. To stop waiting for permission to live my life. A year after my father's death, I stood in the newly renovated living room of his house, my house, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and family members who had chosen to see the truth rather than believe Diana's lies. The company was thriving under new leadership, including my own more active role. The walls were now a warm terracotta instead of Diana's stark white. My mother's photographs smiled down from every surface. This gathering marked not just the anniversary of my father's passing, but the official launch of the Sarah Baker Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting single parents and their children. It felt right to create something meaningful. From the pain to transform the inheritance into a force for good. As I raised a glass to make a toast, I caught sight of myself in the mirror across the room. I looked more like my mother than ever, but I could see my father there too. In the determined set of my jaw, in the careful way I'd organized this event, in the protective instinct that had driven me to create the foundation. To new beginnings, I said to the gathered crowd, and to honoring the past without being imprisoned by it. Later, as the last guest departed, I walked through the quiet house, turning off lights and straightening pillows. In my father's study, transformed now with touches of color and light, I paused at his desk. From the drawer, I took out his letter and the journal. I traced my fingers over his handwriting, feeling not the sharp pain of betrayal that had consumed me a year ago, but a softer ache of understanding. He had failed me in many ways. Diana had tried to destroy me, but here I stood anyway, stronger for having faced the truth, wiser for having seen the full complexity of the people who had shaped my life. I was never a backup plan. I was never an obligation. I was a daughter who had been loved imperfectly, but completely by a father who didn't know how to show it. And now, finally, I was free to write my own story. I placed the documents back in the drawer, but left it unlocked. The past no longer needed to be secured behind locks and keys. It could simply be what it was, a chapter concluded, a lesson learned, the foundation upon which I would build whatever came next. As I turned out the last light, I whispered into the darkness, "Good night, Dad. I forgive you." And for the first time, I truly meant it. Tell me in the comments, how would you handle this situation? Your thoughts might be more powerful than the story itself. And if you love real-life drama, emotional twists, and shocking family moments, don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Alina. Every story here will touch your heart or break it.